Liza and Jeremy, the twins, were asleep one calm and quiet night, and suddenly it began to rain very hard. Thunder rumbled until it got so loud it woke them up. "Mommy, Mommy," they cried as they ran out to her. "Don't worry, you two. It's just the storm making all that noise. Go on back to bed." "We want to stay close to you," said Jeremy. "We're scared." Mom said, "You know, we're always together, no matter what." "But how can we be together when you're out here and we're in bed?" said Liza. And so Mom held something right in front of them and said, "This is how." Rubbing their sleepy eyes, the twins came closer to see what was Mom holding. "When I was about your age, when my mom first told me about the invisible string." "I don't see a string," said Jeremy. "You don't need to see an invisible string. People who love each other are always connected by a very special string made of love." "But if you can't see it, how do you know it's there?" asked Liza. "Well, even though you can't see it with your eyes, you can feel it in your heart, and you know that you are always connected to everyone that you love. When you're at school and you miss me, your love travels along that string until I feel a little tug on my heart. And when we tug right back when we feel it in our hearts," said Jeremy. "Does Jasper the cat have an invisible string?" "She sure does," said Mom. "And best friends like me and Lucy?" asked Liza. "Best friends too." "How far can that string travel and reach?" "Anywhere and everywhere," Mom said. "Would it reach me if I was a submarine captain in the bottom of the ocean?" asked Jeremy. "Yes," said Mom, "even there." "Or a mountain climber?" "Even there." "A dancer in France?" "Even there." "A jungle explorer?" "Even there." "How about an astronaut in outer space?" "Yes, yes, even there." And then Jeremy asked quietly, "Can my string reach all the way to Uncle Brian in heaven?" "Yes, even there." "Does the string go away when you're mad at us?" "No," Mom said, "never. Love is stronger than anger, and as long as love is in your heart, the string will always be there. Even when you get older and you can't agree about things like what movie to see or what game to play in the back seat or what time to go to bed, hey, that's right, you two are supposed to be in bed." And with that, they all laughed as Mom chased the twins back to their bed, and within a few minutes they were asleep, even though the storm outside was still making the same loud noise as before. And as they slept, they started dreaming of all the invisible strings they have, and all the strings their friends have, and their friends' friends have, until everyone in the world was connected by invisible strings. And from deep inside, they now could see very clearly that no one is ever alone. The end. Please rise in body or in spirit for our next hymn, number 168, One More Step. Religious education participants will follow me out the door after the first verse.
Take one more step. may be seated. I'd just like to invite you in now to a time of contemplation, which will be followed by silence, followed by the seated singing of Spirit of Life. So do whatever you need to do to be comfortable in your body. Maybe you feel the ground beneath your feet or the air right above your head. Maybe you can feel your breath moving in and out of your belly. Bring your attention to here and now. Spirit of life and love, Holy One of our being and our becoming, that which is sacred within, among, and beyond us. May we feel the string connecting us this morning. May our connections lead us to love beyond belief, and may our beliefs lead us to shared work for justice. May our beliefs be in integrity with love, internally and externally, feeling, ground, and action. May we weave our individual morals, our internal love together with others into a communal fabric, an ethic of love that acts for all of being. May it be so.
The first discussion about politics I remember hearing was between my father and one of my older brothers. Now, it wasn't actually much of a discussion or argument. It was really a long, rambling discourse by my brother about the political theory he had just been reading, which had led him to a very firm conclusion about which candidate our parents should vote for in the election for Illinois governor. Dad just listened quietly and didn't offer much except to say, eventually, that he would likely vote for the other candidate. Hearing this, my 17-year-old brother was eager to engage in debate. He wanted to offer his carefully reasoned explication of whatever political philosophy he'd been exploring, and he sort of demanded to hear the theories of politics behind my dad's vote. I can still hear Dad's response. He just quietly said, "Well, I don't know if this is a political philosophy or not, but I vote the way I do because when the people I vote for are in the State House down there in Springfield, I don't see nearly as many men eating out of the garbage bins on the street. And I don't think people should have to eat garbage." For him, I think it was simply a personal moral decision. When someone needs help, a person should do what they can to help, and what he could do was vote. But I think beyond that, he also considered his individual choices in a broader context. Dad was a member shareholder of the local farmers cooperative, and at year's end, he got a dividend, some small percentage of the business he'd done there. And being a big family on a small farm, even that small dividend was important to us. So I was puzzled that he also bought some of his supplies from the other grain elevator in town, where he got no rebate. When I asked why he didn't do all his business at the co-op, he said, "I think having 2 successful elevators in town is better than just one because it helps make the whole town more successful." And I thought to myself, that's nuts. Our little bit of business makes no difference We were tenant farmers, not landowners, and money was always scarce. Our cars and our machinery were always used, never bought new, so why would he give up that dividend, however small it was? I came to understand that, yes, he knew his small bit of business was akin to his one vote. By itself, it didn't matter all that much. But he also understood, and not theoretically, but at a very practical level, how his personal choices fit into and influenced an ethical construct of strong community. Around that same time, I stayed overnight once with a classmate at his grandfather's farm. I didn't know the grandpa, and I was pretty intimidated by what seemed his really gruff manner and blunt questions about how I knew his grandson and did I play sports, or was I a good student, and so on. And then he paused for a moment and asked, "What's your last name again?" I answered, and he said, "Are you one of Grady's boys?" I said I was, and his whole manner changed. With a kindlier look on his face, he said, "Well, good, son, because your dad is one of the most successful men I know." I confess at the time I didn't really know why he would say that, but looking back later, I decided he was right, because he saw integrity as success.
Some of you may have heard me tell the story from my climate organizing days about a fellow climate organizer who spoke about climate change to an audience in the Bible Belt. My friend was from that area and she was familiar with evangelical Christian culture, so she tailored her speech to emphasize creation care and being good stewards of the earth. She called on her neighbors to work with her to care for God's green earth. And after her talk, a woman in the audience came up to her and complimented her on her speech. And my friend felt so successful. And then the woman said, "It's so sweet that you care so much about the earth, but honey, you have to understand, God's gonna burn it." And my friend's sense of success drained. In the liberal religious tradition, we understand religion through the lens of modern knowledge rather than biblical or other traditional authority. Now, I want to be clear, when I use the term religious liberalism, I'm referring to a theological category in religion that is talking about the nature of knowledge. It's different from the term the religious left, which is talking about political leanings. So being religiously liberal means that our beliefs change as human understanding of knowledge grows. One of the pillars of liberal theology, James Luther Adams, argued that no single moment in history should be able to claim a singular and enduring truth because reality is being continuously created. But this leaves the question, as religious liberals and Unitarian Universalists, what exactly is it that we believe? As you use, we're fundamentally committed to a free and open search for truth and for meaning. We are a religion of seekers, and yet, at some point, it's possible that something might be found. So how do we hold out hope for the foundness while simultaneously maintaining our commitment to the seeking? How do we include those within our midst who have found something, as well as those who are still in their process of seeking? How do we create a religious identity that is both about seeking and includes what may or may not be found? As religious liberals and Unitarian Universalists, our work is to stay open, to a multiplicity of stories, to the many ways that human beings seek and find, and simultaneously find stories that bind us together. Ideas that we can return to again and again that provide deep and layered meaning for our lives. The Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker, theologian and former president of Starr King School for the Ministry, says that all human beings have a core operating system, some system of values, some big story about the world and how it works that undergirds our lives. Whether we realize it or not, we're operating on some core assumption of what the world is like and what our role in it is. It's the task of the religious community to raise those assumptions to the surface so we can examine them and see how they affect our lives and our world. The woman who told my organizing friend that it was sweet that she cared about the earth, but that God's going to burn it, was operating from a core operating system. Her religion had taught her something about how the world worked, and that affected the way that she interacted with the world. She wasn't a bad person. She wasn't unkind or uncaring. Indeed, she had gone up to my friend after the speech to compliment her on her speech. But her belief that God was going to burn the world led her to choices and behaviors that did not express care for the world. Behavior that would likely show up in things like recycling or fossil fuel consumption, but also probably in things like voting and decisions about how to take care of the common good. In Unitarian Universalism, we don't have a creed. We don't have a set belief statement or set in stone story that everyone has to believe to belong. This has led some people to say things like, well, you can believe whatever you want as a UU. I mean, I've probably even said that myself at some point. And it might be shorthand, like it was for Dale's father when he said that he didn't care about his son's political philosophy, but did in fact care very much about the effect of the policies coming out of Springfield. Liberal religion does not assume that it doesn't matter what you believe. Rather, liberal religion recognizes that healthy belief is open to change. We expect new learning and growth. We expect our religion and our belief to be informed by humanity's progress, by new science and modern knowledge, by evolving understanding, and reason. Within that evolving framework, however, it matters very much what we believe. Believing that God's gonna burn it has serious consequences for how we treat this earth that we live on and are a part of. Conversely, believing in the science of climate change has led millions of people to change their behaviors and work for changes in laws about burning fossil fuels. Believing that God made white people superior to other races has had some pretty awful consequences for human behavior. Conversely, believing that every human being is inherently worthy and created equal has meant that our denomination has deliberately committed itself to move towards anti-racism. In our Unitarian Universalist traditions, we have a number of founding theological threads that are woven together. They make up the tapestry of who we are as a faith. And that tapestry envelops us, It provides possibilities. It covers the ground of our journey together as seekers. One of those theological threads is the idea that together we are moving towards justice. Writing about the abolition of slavery in the 1800s, the transcendentalist Unitarian minister Theodore Parker wrote, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc of it is a long one, and my eye reaches but a little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see there, I am sure that it bends towards justice." It is likely that this sermon from the 1800s inspired the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King to so famously say that the arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. This theological thread is one of our core operating systems as Unitarian Universalists. No matter how hopeless and how painful what is happening right now is, we believe that in the long arc of history, we will end up together in justice. The way that that story functions is to give hope to the hopeless, to light a candle in the dark night, and to help us move forward when we are paralyzed by fear or dread or despair. It functions to keep us going when we're scared or sad. This theological thread may or may not include God. For some people, it's simply an evolutionary process moving towards increasing complexity and integration and harmony in which life itself is favored. For others, there is a loving God moving through the process, bringing the world along towards the beloved community. We have other threads in our tapestry as well. We have a number of core operating systems at the heart of our tradition. Another one is the science of today, modern knowledge and reason, the lens through which we understand divinity. A third one, for which many Unitarian Universalists is primary, is the one that's listed first in our 6 sources of wisdom, that direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. In his 1838 Divinity School address, Ralph Waldo Emerson argued that the intuition of the soul is the primary source of religious knowledge and its foremost authority. He told the Divinity School students at Harvard to put down their books and the mediating influence of other people's instructions and to go out into the world and experience the divine. He told them to learn for themselves what beauty and the earth and other human beings had to teach about the nature of reality and of divinity. In Unitarian Universalism, we also have a core operating story of existentialism and a humanist story of our role in that world. In that story, the world just is. It's not intelligent, it's not moving towards anything in particular, and it is human agency alone that creates and maintains morals, that moves humanity and the community of the living earth towards or away from any concept that we've developed. Albert Camus called this the benign indifference of the universe. In humanist theology, justice is a moral concept that human beings developed. Because human beings alone have ethics, It is human beings' responsibility to uphold them. In humanism, collective humanity is its own greater power. The beauty and the love that we create together is what holds us. And it is our vision of justice that propels us to ethical decisions and actions. This story functions to free people to collectively determine together their vision of what justice is, and then empowers them to make choices to move towards that understanding of the good. Another thread in our theological tradition, less prominent but still present, sees the process of life on earth as patterned towards destruction and chaos. The general movement of humanity and history and nature is entropy. Things fall apart. Although our Unitarian theology originated by turning away from this worldview, when our founders said, actually, we think that humanity's nature is more good than evil, one can still find the echoes of our Calvinist forebears and theology in our tradition. There are still liberal religious people and theologians who think humanity tends towards more evil than good. One can see even more evidence of this worldview in broader society. It undergirds conservative politics, that the world is prone to disintegration, full of bad guys and spinning faster and faster towards chaos, so that we must be ever vigilant against the evil encroaching upon us, from our borders to our schools to our families. One of the ways that I've seen that theology function in the world is to increase people's fear and to have them put up boundaries and approach others with suspicion and attention to defense. We must attend both to belief and to how that belief functions. How does what we believe cause us to behave in the world? What does our belief provide for us? In 2014, I helped lead the Beloved Conversations curriculum of anti-racism and connecting across difference with Unity Church Unitarian and 2 other congregations in St. Paul. Unity is a large Unitarian Universalist congregation with a high formal liturgy and culture and a majority middle and upper class white congregation. The other 2 congregations that were participating in the conversations were both African American. One was a very non-traditional Pentecostal Universalist congregation. That's a thing. And the other one was a very traditional Baptist congregation. One of the Unitarian participants in Beloved Conversations Across Difference explained that developing relationships with folks in the other 2 congregations helped her see how their faith was functioning in a way that she had not previously considered. As an atheist, she had spent most of her life dismissing and even deriding what she called saving faiths because she understood them to be superstitious and unreasonable. But when she developed friendships with people who believed in a life-affirming version of a saving faith, she saw how their belief in something larger than themselves that saved people, saved them from poverty or from oppression or from grief or from despair. She saw how that belief functioned in their lives to restore hope and to reconnect them with love. She saw how it caused her new friends to act in loving and accepting ways that held out hope for a different future, as well as an accepting love for her, an open atheist, as another child of God. It didn't change her own beliefs, but rather, seeing how it functioned in her friends' lives, gave her a newfound understanding of its value. In church, our work is to raise up our core operating systems to the surface and examine them. You too have a story of how the world works and what your role and humanity's role is in it. What are the consequences of your story? How does it cause you to behave in the world? How does it cause you to act with other people? As Unitarian Universalists, we're called to both examine our own beliefs and to evaluate the merits and the consequences of a variety of beliefs. We use our reason to discern consequences for ourselves and for other people. So how can we as a people recognize the complexity and the differences of how human beings live out their beliefs and their faith in the world? For instance, the woman who told my organizer friend that God's gonna burn it, and the folks in the Beloved Conversations curriculum in St. Paul would both say that they subscribe to the Christian story. But they interpret that set of stories in different ways and with different consequences for how they behave in the world. Unitarian Universalism is a big tent of belief. We have Christians and atheists in our congregations. We have humanists and Muslims. We have people from a variety of different traditions and sets of beliefs. Our job is to discern how those beliefs cause us to act in the world. There's a difference between an atheist whose understanding of the world is that we're called to create human justice on the basis of human-developed ethics, and an atheist who sees an indifferent world as a call to nihilism. There's a difference between a Christian whose core operating system teaches that some people are saved and some people are damned, and then behaves by acting in exclusionary and hateful ways, and a Christian whose core operating system teaches that God is love and acts out that belief in the world by loving their neighbor. Discerning the different effects of belief is how we weave individual morals together into a shared community ethic in our congregations. We examine individual morals, individual core operating systems, and then we gather together with people who might have different core operating systems, but with whom we share an ethic of love, with whom we can act in the world in ways that have positive consequences and connect us with other people and the earth. It's not only about internal right belief or external right behavior, salvation by grace or salvation by works, but rather it's the connection between the inner and the outer, the integrity of the inner belief system with the outer love ethic that weaves us together as you use. In the liberal religious church, our various theological strands meet and merge and make up our tapestry of faith. Together we gather and practice living out our beliefs, living them in covenant among us and in relationship with the world beyond these walls. We gather in a community that celebrates diversity of belief and also calls us more deeply into a grounded ethic of love. May it be so.